Now, before I even get started here, just know that this is going to be another one of my Sunday commentary style videos, which means there will be some relations to Star Wars and other similar properties, but it really won't be about them. And so if you're just here for straight Star Wars talk or content, you can by all means feel free to skip this video and come back for the next one. That said, one of the big debates or discussions I always see going on these days, and I got into a rather interesting one the other day, which is kind of the cause for this video. Well, it's over politics in modern entertainment, especially in movies or TV, and recently in sports as well, though in this video I won't be talking so much about the latter. Anyway, some people will simply say there's no place for politics in entertainment anymore, or that there is, but it should at least be kept out of certain more escapism franchises like Star Wars, while others will say politics have always been in movies. They've been the driving force or reason behind a lot of the stories they already love, like Star Wars, so their inclusion is nothing new, and nothing that should be changed. And of course, one of the more common arguments I see people make against politics in entertainment, and you've likely heard it too, or made it yourself, is that since it feels like political discussion has become so prevalent elsewhere in our lives, not to mention contentious and downright nasty sometimes, they want entertainment to be a reprieve or escape from it. Which I do think is a fair and certainly understandable stance, that if people want to watch an overtly fictional movie that takes place in another galaxy or in a fantasy world, or even in an alternate version of our world, they don't want to feel like they're being lectured to about the problems or issues of our real current world. They want to forget all that and immerse themselves in this other world, if you will. However, on the flip side of that, there are those that will argue or point out that other fictional worlds and or settings or stories are the perfect place to create an allegory pertaining to something in our world, the perfect way to address real-world issues without it maybe feeling very heavy-handed or too on the nose. And oftentimes, when it's subtle and done right, and that's really the key, it can perhaps make people see some sort of issue in a new light. It can get them to think about something they may otherwise never have. But one of the problems with that today is that it's not always done subtly. They're not trying to get you to think, they're trying to tell you how to think. Or you'll be told outside the movie what they want the takeaway to be or what they want to accomplish with the film. Brie Larson saying she wants the character of Captain Marvel to be her form of activism is one such example of this that caused quite the stir, to put it mildly. And though there just seemed to be this assumption made by the media and others that anyone who had any sort of problem with her saying something like that must be a terrible person or a sexist or whatever else it might be, and don't get me wrong, some people did go way too far, but the truth is they completely misunderstood the real core reason for all the anger over what she said. It wasn't that they disagree with the message per se, that they don't think women should have representation in superhero movies and be treated fairly in society and all that, because contrary to what they'd like to tell you, pretty much everyone in society these days believes that pretty much everyone is for equality for women and equality for everybody. But the problem is they don't want a movie in one of their favorite franchises, like the MCU, to be about all that. They don't want to pay $15 to see a film that lectures them about, again, something they agree with and have never had a problem with. Oddly enough, people don't go to superhero movies to be made to feel bad about themselves. And I'm not even saying that's what Captain Marvel the film was or did, but that was the impression that was given about it beforehand. And this is where the biggest misunderstanding occurs today when people talk about all the hate or toxicity in a fan base like Star Wars, or that it's full of sexists or racist or whatever other ist you want to use. Which is that, to a lot of fans, one of the most important things, if not the most important thing, is the integrity of the story or the integrity of the canon. That even though they know it's all fictional, they want to treat it like it's something real or something that actually happened. They want to believe Star Wars really did take place in this far, far away galaxy a long time ago, and they don't want to think that what's happening right now in the real world is impacting the stories being told in that fictional world or galaxy. In other words, they don't want modern politics, agendas, beliefs, or whatever else it might be to impact these stories. They want the already created context and lore of the fictional universe to be the only thing to impact and dictate the stories told within it. Because fictional or not, they want it to be a completely self-contained reality, independent of what may or may not be happening in our real world. And yes, you might go back and again say that stories have always been used that way, to reflect the world around the author or creator, or that originally George Lucas created Star Wars for this particular reason or that, and was heavily influenced by the world around him at the time. And since that's the case, stories told now in the Star Wars galaxy should also reflect these current times, that Star Wars should remain a reflection of the modern world. And though anyone creating a new story today is certainly free to do that, they can certainly make it a commentary on the times and no one will take issue with it or even bat an eye. The problem with Star Wars doing that is that it has long since sort of taken on a life of its own. It has become, in the eyes of most of its fans, its own self-contained thing or place or reality or whatever you'd like to call it. Another such example of this, and probably an even greater one, would be the works of Tolkien. Lord of the Rings or Middle-earth is considered almost like this sacred place to some of its most loyal fans, and there are even scholars who study it and treat it as something genuine and real. And so again here, people want to see the integrity of these fictional places and stories maintained above all else. They are our modern day myths. They don't want them messed with. They don't want to see them change with the ebb and flow of real world politics or events. They don't want them to be a mirror of the real world, even if that's what they were originally created from. They want them to be independent of all that, to be a place they can truly go to escape from everything that is currently happening in the real world. And so the moment something like Star Wars starts to overtly prioritize real-world messages or agendas over what's the best story that can be told from an in-universe perspective, it's the same moment that the illusion of it being real is shattered and anything from apathy to anger ensues from some fans. And the best or maybe worst example of this in Star Wars is of course Rey, and so many want to say that the fans that hate her just hate women and or don't want to see them in Star Wars, especially in leading roles. And those who ignorantly say this just ignore other great female characters that have happily been embraced within Star Wars and other similar franchises. And the simple truth here is a lot of the fans who don't like Rey not only thought she was just a bad or poorly written character, but, right or wrong, they think the only reason why she's so powerful, why she's sort of put on this pedestal, is because those behind the sequel trilogy's creation wanted to showcase a strong female character, that it was one of the main points or purposes of these movies, and that her powers and abilities made no sense whatsoever within the context of the story, which is where it matters most to them, even though they do try to explain her power in the 11th hour by making her a Palpatine. Furthermore, since they see Rey, the main character of the story, as more of a product of a real-world agenda than something that makes sense within Star Wars, it means that their one true hope and desire for the sequel trilogy, that it would be the best possible story that it could be told within universe, one independent of any, or at least most, real-world factors, that it wasn't realized. They see the sequel trilogy as propaganda for a cause, and not a genuine Star Wars story, and so they reject it and what they feel are the most egregious insertions of an agenda, which they feel Rey is. Which brings us full circle and right back to that part that seems so very hard for some people to understand, which is that just because some reject Rey and the idea of Star Wars being used for this message that you could call female empowerment, I suppose, it doesn't mean they reject the actual message. Hatred of Rey does not automatically translate into hatred for all female characters or all women in general, and purposely conflating the two, usually for the sake of selling a story, is one of the saddest things I see happen these days out of the media and elsewhere. But of course, there's also a whole other side to this. There are those who think, both within these companies and without, that Disney, Lucasfilm, and others have an obligation to pitch these messages to their audiences. And look, before going on, we can certainly debate just how much or little of an agenda actually gets pushed in the new Star Wars films, for example. But we can't argue that outside of it, people like Kathleen Kennedy, president of Lucasfilm, have talked about the real-world importance of showcasing characters like Rey and including more women in Star Wars, which is not a bad thing. But again, people don't want that to be the point of Star Wars. Anyway, the other day I literally had a discussion or debate with someone who said, and I'm quoting verbatim here, that if Star Wars fans who hate Rey aren't sexist, they'd agree that promoting strong women in Star Wars is important, more important than the movies or Star Wars itself even is. Their whole argument was basically that anyone who has the attention of the masses should use that in order to, as they said, educate people on important matters. And my response to that was to say that I'm sorry you have so little faith in humanity, that you have such a low opinion of people, that you actually think they need to be taught and lectured to at every turn, and that you think it would actually work and not have the opposite effect. That you feel like Star Wars needs to teach people how to be decent to one another or treat everyone fairly, because if that's the case, and mind you, I do love Star Wars and there are some great takeaways that can be had from it, but anyway, if that's the case, if Star Wars needs to teach us how to be better people, then society has bigger problems than something like Star Wars could ever fix. And the part that people like this don't understand or don't want to understand is that just because you're not out there on the front lines supporting their cause, or that you want to see Star Wars remain independent of their cause, doesn't necessarily mean you don't agree with it or support it. But they see any degree of apathy from you, and especially any type of questioning, as not only being complicit, but somehow being actively against them. Don't think Star Wars should be used to make a statement about female empowerment means you're a sexist. End of story. And look, I know some will think this is an argument against women or minorities or whatever it might be being represented in franchises like Star Wars, but it's not. Because, and not to sound like a hypocrite now, but yes, I do think there should be more female characters or minorities in Star Wars. Why not? Who's against it? And I do agree the lead of the sequels should have been a woman. I'm fine with all these things, as pretty much all fans are. But what I and many others are tired of is it seeming like every decision being made is about that. I'm tired of them acting like white knights because they gave a woman a leading role, like it's my fault and not theirs that it didn't happen before. And that when they put minimal thought into the actual character and story around her, that it turns out horribly for Rey, and that I get blamed and ridiculed for not liking what they put out. I'm just tired of it sounding like so many of the decisions being made have nothing to do with actual Star Wars. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think. Is the integrity of the canon and story the most important part to you? And do you think Star Wars should constantly change and be a reflection of the real world? Or should it forever remain a reflection of what it was originally created as? Whatever you think, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.